It was a Tuesday when everything shifted, when I realized that the life I thought we were building together was nothing more than a fragile illusion. I'd always respected her independence, her desire to keep things separate, to carve out space that was distinctly hers. We had separate bank accounts, separate savings, even separate hobbies. She insisted it was for our own good, a way to avoid conflict, she said. But the problem with separation is that it creates distance. And now, as I sat there staring at that credit card statement, I could feel the distance growing, but this time it wasn't just financial. It was personal. It was in that moment, as I traced the words on the printed page, hotel stay, 2 nights, 3rd to 5th, followed by the name of a city I knew we hadn't planned to visit, that everything I thought I knew about us began to unravel. My mind raced through the possibilities, each one more absurd than the last, but none of them were comforting. I tried to convince myself there was some mistake, a mix-up, an error in the system, but deep down, I knew better. I had seen this before, had sensed this shift for weeks now, but I had refused to acknowledge it. I hadn't wanted to face it. I knew I should confront her, but something inside me froze. The words I had planned in my head, the calm, measured approach I promised myself, suddenly felt too weak. Too small to hold the weight of the truth I was starting to piece together. I tried to ignore the gnawing feeling in my stomach, the growing sense that this wasn't just a simple misunderstanding. I wanted to believe in her. I wanted to trust her. I needed to. But how could I ignore the evidence? I sat down on the couch, the statement still in my hands. The numbers and charges blurred together, but the words, hotel stay, stood out like a neon sign, burning through my thoughts. I should have just called her, asked her to explain. I should have waited until she came home, but I couldn't. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through the rest of the statement, searching for any more clues, any more breadcrumbs she might have left behind. I had already been searching her texts for weeks, hoping to find an explanation. But that hotel charge was the nail in the coffin. It was a blatant reminder that the life we had built, the one I had trusted, the one I thought was real, was built on something fragile. I couldn't stop myself anymore. I grabbed my phone and sent a text before I could talk myself out of it. We need to talk when you get home. It was a simple text. Calm. Controlled. I had to keep my voice steady, even if my heart was pounding in my chest. I set the phone down and leaned back, trying to collect my thoughts. I didn't even know what to say to her anymore. My mind kept returning to that hotel. Who was she with? Why didn't she tell me? And, more than anything, why was I finding out this way? The hours felt like days. Every sound in the apartment felt amplified, every second dragging on until she would walk through the door, her face unreadable, her eyes hiding whatever it was she was holding back. I should have been angry, I told myself. I should have stormed into the kitchen, grabbed a drink, and confronted her as soon as she walked in. But I wasn't angry, I was scared. I was scared of what I might hear, scared of what she might say. I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it. But I didn't have a choice. The door clicked open, and I heard the familiar sound of her shoes against the hardwood. My heart rate spiked, and for a moment, I didn't know how to breathe. I forced myself to sit up, to appear as calm as possible, even though I could feel my world spinning beneath me. She walked into the living room, her eyes immediately scanning the room, and when she saw the statement in my hands, she stopped. "Hey, what's going on?" she asked, her voice light, almost too light. I didn't answer at first. My eyes locked onto hers, searching for any sign of guilt, but she looked the same, calm, collected, as if nothing was wrong. As if nothing had changed. Her gaze flicked to the credit card statement in my hand, then back to my face. "You okay?" I swallowed, feeling the weight of the question pressing down on me. "I saw the hotel charge on the card," I said quietly. "We weren't planning a trip." "So, who was with you?" Her face changed, the lightness gone, replaced by something darker, something I couldn't place. She blinked, once, twice, and then shifted uncomfortably. I noticed the way her hands fidgeted, how her shoulders tensed. A cold wave of dread washed over me. I'd been hoping for an explanation, something, anything, but her hesitation made everything worse. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice more defensive now. I waited. My heart was still pounding in my chest, my throat tight, but I couldn't look away. I needed her to tell me the truth. I needed her to fix this. She let out a long breath, then crossed her arms, her gaze dropping to the floor. "It was a work thing," she said, her voice softer now. "I didn't want to tell you because it seemed unnecessary. It wasn't a big deal, just a last-minute trip." "A last-minute trip?" I repeated, trying to keep the disbelief out of my voice. With who? Her silence was louder than anything she could have said. She wasn't meeting my eyes now, and I could feel the gulf between us widening with each passing second. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. I should have been mad, should have been furious, but all I felt was a deep, gnawing confusion. My trust in her was slipping away, but I wasn't ready to let go just yet. Not without a fight. Who was with you? I asked again, my voice firm, desperate to hold on to something real. She hesitated, her lips trembling for a moment before she sighed, her shoulders sagging. I didn't want to tell you about him. Not yet. I froze. His name hung in the air like a curse. A name I didn't recognize, a name I never thought I would have to hear. The silence that followed was unbearable. It pressed in from all sides, crushing me with the weight of its truth. My chest tightened, and the air in the room felt suddenly thin. I didn't know if I wanted to hear more or if I was already drowning in too much information. His name. The one I hadn't expected. The one I couldn't even begin to understand. I looked at her, my mind spinning as I tried to make sense of the few words she had said. Him? My voice was barely a whisper, raw, and unsteady. I wasn't sure if I wanted to shout or cry, but both felt too much, too overwhelming. She avoided my gaze, her hands twisting nervously. She was shifting, unsure, almost like a person trapped in a lie they didn't know how to get out of. It's not what you think, she repeated, but the words felt emptier this time, as if she knew they no longer carried any weight. I swallowed hard, but my throat felt dry. I had to know. I needed to know. You can't just leave it like that, I said, my voice firmer now, although the shakiness still lingered. Who is he? How long has this been going on? How long have you been lying to me? Her face contorted slightly as if she were fighting some internal battle. She opened her mouth and closed it again, her lips trembling as though trying to gather the courage to speak. His name is Adam, she finally said, her words slow, each one coming out as though it pained her to say it. He's someone I met a while ago. He's been helping me with some work stuff. But it's not what you think. Her voice trailed off, and she seemed to withdraw, retreating even further into herself. Work stuff. I repeated, the words like acid in my mouth. I could feel my pulse in my throat. This wasn't some casual acquaintance, this wasn't a colleague or a friend. This was Adam. And something about the way she said it, so hesitantly, so defensively, made everything inside me freeze. Why didn't you tell me about him? I asked, trying to control the wave of frustration building in my chest. Why all the secrecy? She paused for a moment, clearly searching for words that wouldn't hurt, words that would somehow make this whole thing seem less real, less like a betrayal. I didn't want to upset you, she said finally. I didn't think it would matter. Didn't think it would matter? My mind screamed in disbelief. It mattered. It mattered more than anything. Didn't think it would matter? I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice now. I stood up from the couch, pacing the room as the flood of emotions overwhelmed me. We're married. How can you sit here and say that? She winced at my words, but I couldn't stop. I had to keep going. The silence between us had never felt so loud. I've trusted you, I continued, my voice rising, my emotions starting to get the better of me. I've trusted you with everything, my heart, my time, my future. And you've been seeing someone else behind my back, lying to me, hiding things from me, for months, maybe longer. Her face crumpled slightly, and I saw the guilt flashing across her features. But I couldn't stop myself from pushing her, demanding answers that I feared would only hurt more. Why didn't you just tell me, huh? Why didn't you tell me about him? Why keep me in the dark? I didn't mean for it to happen this way, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It just got out of hand. And I didn't want to lose you. I was scared you wouldn't understand. I stopped pacing, feeling my body tense with frustration. Scared I wouldn't understand? You've been lying to me, for God's sake. And now I'm supposed to just understand. I never wanted to hurt you, she said quietly, her voice breaking slightly. This wasn't about you. It was about me. About something I needed to figure out on my own. The anger surged again, but it was tempered with something deeper, something heavier. Betrayal. I had never imagined that I would hear those words from her mouth, not like this, not after everything we'd built together. I ran my hand through my hair, trying to breathe, trying to stay calm. But the truth was that I wasn't calm, not at all. I was furious. And terrified. The fear clawed at me, gnawing at my insides, making it hard to focus. So what is this? I asked, my voice tight, still struggling to keep the tremor out of it. What is this, if not an affair? If it's not about us anymore, then what is it? It's not an affair, she said, her voice low, strained. It's complicated, and I know I've made it worse by keeping things from you, but I never meant for it to be like this. I never meant for it to get so far. It's just, Adam was there for me when I needed someone. And I didn't know how to tell you, not when I could see that you were already so caught up in everything else. I was too scared. I stood there, looking at her, searching her eyes for something, anything, that would give me a reason to stay, a reason to believe that we could fix this. But the more she spoke, the more I felt myself unraveling. She had been scared. Scared that I wouldn't understand. But what she didn't understand was that this wasn't about understanding. It was about trust. It was about honesty. It was about us, and she had already made her choice. I didn't know what to say anymore. My mind was racing, pulling me in every direction at once. Was I ready to walk away? Was I ready to throw away everything we had? Could I even look at her the same way after all of this? I don't know what to do anymore, I said finally, my voice cracking. I don't know if I can believe you. I don't know if I can trust you again. Her face softened for a moment, but it was fleeting, like a moment of clarity in a fog. I don't want to lose you, she said, her eyes searching mine, as if pleading for some kind of mercy. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the space between us felt wider now, more permanent. The walls she had built around herself, the ones she insisted were necessary, had become impenetrable. And I wasn't sure if I could find my way through them again. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy now, filled with the weight of unspoken words, of everything that had been left out in the open for far too long. I wasn't sure where we went from here, but I knew that we couldn't go back to what we had before. And that realization was more painful than anything else. I don't know how long we stayed there, sitting in the silence, both of us unwilling to speak but also unable to look away from each other. Every second felt like a lifetime, heavy, suffocating, stretching the moment into something unbearable. I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears, like a drum pounding in rhythm with the thoughts crashing through my mind. It was the worst kind of quiet, the kind where everything you want to say is trapped inside, and the space between you and the person you loved seems to stretch further with every passing second. Finally, she spoke again. I never wanted to hurt you, she said, her voice trembling this time, raw and vulnerable. I never thought it would go this far. I thought I could handle it, I thought it was just a phase, but it wasn't. The words spilled out like a confession, a desperate attempt to make it all sound like something I could forgive, like something I could move past. But I couldn't ignore the way her hands shook as she held them tightly together in her lap. I couldn't ignore the way she avoided my eyes, like she was too ashamed to face the full weight of what she had done. It's not just about Adam, is it? I asked, my voice low, but sharp. It's about something deeper than that. Something that you've been hiding from me for so long. Her gaze flickered, her mouth opening as though she were about to say something but then hesitating. I could see the conflict in her eyes, the battle between wanting to keep the walls up and the desperate need to let it all out, to come clean. It's complicated, she murmured. I don't know how to explain it, but it's not just him. It's me. I've been lost for so long. And I didn't want to burden you with it. She looked up at me now, her eyes brimming with tears, but there was something else there too, fear. Fear of the consequences, fear of losing me, fear of not being able to fix what had been broken. I've been so selfish, she said, the words barely escaping her lips. I've been trying to fill a hole inside me, and I thought maybe if I could just do things on my own, I wouldn't need anyone. I didn't need you to see this side of me. I sat there, feeling the weight of her words settle over me like a thick fog. I didn't know how to respond to all of this. How could I? I wasn't even sure if I understood it myself. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw everything she had said back in her face, but another part, the softer part, wanted to reach out and pull her into me, tell her that we could figure this out together. But I knew that wasn't realistic. The truth had already come out, and there was no hiding from it now. The cracks in our relationship were too deep, and I couldn't just pretend like everything was going to magically fix itself with a few comforting words. I don't know what to say, I confessed, my voice tight with the effort to keep my emotions from taking over. I don't know if I can just forgive this. I don't expect you to, she whispered, shaking her head slowly. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to understand that I didn't mean for it to hurt you. I never wanted to hurt you. But the damage had already been done. I could feel it, a tightness in my chest, a gnawing emptiness that I couldn't escape. She had broken something, and no matter how much she apologized, no matter how many tears she shed, I knew that the trust we once shared had been shattered. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore," I said quietly, the words tasting like bitter iron on my tongue. She flinched, the impact of those words hitting her harder than I expected. "I know. I understand." The silence stretched between us again, both of us sitting there, caught in a moment where nothing felt certain anymore. It was as though the world outside of the room no longer existed. The house, the city, everything beyond the four walls felt so distant, so irrelevant. "I wish you had told me sooner," I said after a while, my voice almost sounding foreign to my own ears. "I wish you had trusted me enough to be honest, even if it was painful." Her lips trembled, and I saw her struggle with the urge to speak. "I was afraid," she finally admitted. "Afraid that you would leave me. Afraid of being alone." That hit me harder than anything else she'd said. She had been afraid of me leaving her? I was the one sitting here, my world shattered, unable to grasp onto anything that felt solid. She had been so desperate for control, so afraid of losing herself in the process that she'd pushed me further and further away, not realizing that in doing so, she had already lost me. "I'm not sure what to do anymore," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper now. "I don't know what to think or feel. Everything is a mess. Please, don't walk away from me," she pleaded, her voice shaky. She reached out, but I couldn't bring myself to take her hand. "I can't lose you." But I wasn't so sure anymore. Part of me wanted to pull away, to walk out and never look back. But another part, the one that still cared about her, the one that still loved her, wanted to believe her, wanted to find a way to heal what had been broken. But that was the problem, wasn't it? Believing. After everything that had happened, after the lies, the deceit, the hidden credit card charges and secret rendezvous, I wasn't sure how to trust her again. I wasn't sure how to pick up the pieces of a life that had already been scattered. "Maybe we need space," I suggested softly, not sure if it was the right thing to say, but knowing that I couldn't keep pretending like nothing had changed. "Maybe we need time to think, to figure out what we really want. Because I don't know if I can fix this right now." She looked at me with something close to desperation in her eyes. "Please don't say that," she whispered. "I can't lose you. I love you." But the words felt hollow now, like a distant echo of what once was. Love wasn't enough anymore, not when trust had been obliterated. I couldn't deny that I still loved her, but love alone couldn't fix what was broken. I needed something more. Something real. And right now, I wasn't sure she could give me that. "I need time," I said, my voice firm this time, my mind made up. "I need time to think about what comes next. And so do you." And with that, I stood up. I didn't look back as I left the room, my heart pounding with a mixture of pain, anger, and confusion. Where we went from here was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't ready to make any decisions yet. Not when my trust in her felt as fragile as glass. The next few days felt like a blur, each moment dragging on longer than the last. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't do anything without thinking about what had happened, what she had done, and what I was supposed to do next. The silence in the apartment felt louder than any argument could have. Every corner seemed to echo with memories of us together, memories that now felt tainted by the things I had learned, by the things I had seen in the small pieces of evidence she left behind. I spent most of my time at work, trying to keep busy, trying to escape the gnawing ache in my chest. But it followed me everywhere. I couldn't shake it off, no matter how hard I tried. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the tear-streaked look she gave me when I walked out that night, and the way her hands trembled when she told me the truth. But even that, those moments, those feelings, felt like they were slipping away, like I couldn't hold on to them for much longer. When I got home that evening, the apartment felt empty in a way I hadn't felt before. I knew she had been there, that she had left hours ago, but it didn't make the quiet any less oppressive. Her things were still around, the book she had been reading, the jacket she always left on the chair by the door, the shoes she had kicked off by the couch, but they no longer felt like parts of her. They felt like remnants of a life that wasn't mine anymore, a life that was slipping through my fingers faster than I could grasp. I picked up my phone, scrolling aimlessly through my messages, but there was nothing. Nothing from her. She hadn't called. She hadn't texted. After our conversation, after everything that had been said, we hadn't spoken again. I didn't know if that was a sign of respect, of space, or if she was waiting for me to make the first move. But I knew I couldn't do that, not yet. I wasn't ready. I tried to distract myself by watching TV, but the flickering images on the screen felt like noise, like an attempt to drown out the thoughts pounding in my head. I couldn't do it. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine. She had shattered something in me, something that was never going to be the same again. The trust that I had built, the trust that was supposed to hold everything together, had been broken, and there was no way to glue it back together. Not yet, at least. As the night wore on, I found myself staring at the phone again. The blinking cursor on my messages screen seemed to mock me. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what I was supposed to say. How could I reach out to her when I wasn't sure if I even wanted to hear her voice again? How could I ask her to fix something that felt irreparable? I knew she was hurting, too. I could feel it. I could feel the way she had been just as lost in that conversation as I had been. She hadn't wanted to hurt me. She hadn't wanted to break my heart. But the damage had been done, and now there was this space between us, an invisible chasm that neither of us knew how to cross. Finally, after hours of wrestling with my thoughts, I did what I hadn't planned on doing. I called her. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I was just desperate for some kind of closure. Maybe I was looking for an answer that didn't exist. Or maybe, deep down, I just needed to hear her voice, even if it was broken. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Her voice was soft, tentative. Hello? For a moment, there was nothing but silence between us. Neither of us knew where to begin. Neither of us knew what to say after everything that had happened. How are you? I asked, my voice sounding foreign, as if it didn't belong to me. I don't know, she said after a long pause. I don't know how I am. I've been thinking a lot, about everything. The silence returned, heavier this time. I could hear the faint sound of her breathing, as though she were unsure of how to go on. I felt it, too, the weight of the conversation hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. I don't know what to do anymore, I admitted, the words spilling out before I could stop them. I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't know how we're supposed to move forward after all of this. She sighed deeply, and for a moment, I thought she might hang up. But then she spoke, her voice almost a whisper. I don't know either. I don't know if we can fix this. I don't know if we can go back to how things were. I closed my eyes, running a hand through my hair, the frustration rising again. The ache in my chest seemed to tighten. You can't just tell me you don't know. You've been hiding this from me for so long. And now it's like I don't even know who you are anymore. I know, she said, her voice breaking. I know. And I hate myself for it. I've been selfish, and I've been scared. I was afraid of losing you, but I've already lost you, haven't I? I didn't answer. What could I say? The words felt inadequate. I could tell her that I didn't know either, that I wasn't sure if I could walk away from everything we had, or I could tell her that it was too late, that I was already done. But I didn't have an answer. Not yet. I don't know what's going to happen, I said finally, my voice soft but firm. But we need time. We need to think about what we really want. We can't keep doing this, whatever this is. I know, she whispered again, her voice so small. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I know, I replied quietly, and for the first time in days, I felt like I was breathing again, even if it hurt to do so. I need time, too, she said, her voice steadying a little. I need to figure out who I am, without all the lies, without everything I've been hiding. And that was it. The conversation didn't resolve anything. It didn't offer any answers. It was just two people, lost in their own grief, struggling to find a way to make sense of something that didn't make sense. I'll talk to you soon, I said, my voice trailing off. I didn't know when that would be. I'll be here, she replied, and then the call ended. I sat in the silence again, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't ready to let go yet. But I also wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. And I wasn't sure if I ever would be. But for the first time in days, there was a sliver of hope. Maybe it wasn't over. Not yet. But the space between us was real, and it was going to take everything I had to bridge it. It had been 2 weeks since our last conversation. 2 weeks of navigating the space we had created between us, a silence that had stretched long and thin, suffocating but necessary. I couldn't say things had gotten better. They hadn't. But they hadn't gotten worse either. We were just existing in this limbo, waiting for something, anything, that could bring us back together or drive us further apart. I found myself replaying that conversation over and over in my mind, each word echoing in my head like a broken record. She was sorry. She had been hiding things from me. She didn't want to hurt me, but she had. And I was just as lost as she was, stuck in this place between forgiveness and betrayal, unable to decide which way to turn. I spent most of my time at work, burying myself in anything that didn't remind me of her. I went to the gym more often, pushed myself harder with every rep. I told myself I was doing it for me, that I was rebuilding the pieces of myself she had shattered. But in reality, I was trying to escape the truth that no matter how much I worked, how much I tried to outrun the pain, it was always there, lingering just beneath the surface. One evening, I got a message from her. Just a simple text. "We need to talk." My stomach twisted. My thumb hovered over the keyboard as I stared at the words, unsure of what she wanted, unsure if I was even ready to talk to her again. But I knew I had to. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I owed it to myself, and to her, to face whatever was hanging between us. I agreed to meet her at the same cafe we had gone to on our first date. The one with the crooked sign and the faded red chairs. I had no idea why she chose it, but I couldn't help but feel a pang of nostalgia when I saw the place. It used to be a symbol of something good, something real. Now it felt like a relic of a life that was slipping through my fingers. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting in the same corner booth where we had shared that first awkward coffee, the one where neither of us could stop talking. She was looking down at her phone, her hands trembling slightly as she scrolled through messages, a nervous habit I had grown to recognize. She looked up when I sat down, her eyes red, but she smiled, a small, tentative smile. "Hi," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't bring myself to tell her everything that was still running through my mind, the anger, the confusion, the hurt. So, I did the only thing I could do. I asked the question that had been gnawing at me for days. "What now?" She exhaled shakily, looking down at her hands. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. "I wish I did. I wish I could tell you that I have some grand plan, that I know how to fix this. But I don't. I've spent so much time lying to you, lying to myself, that I don't even know who I am anymore." I looked at her, searching her face for any sign of the woman I had once known. The woman I thought I understood. But all I saw was uncertainty, pain, and guilt. She wasn't the same person anymore. And neither was I. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. I had been carrying that weight for so long that it felt good to say it out loud. To admit that I wasn't sure I could move past this. I wasn't sure I could ever look at her the same way again. She flinched, her eyes welling up with tears. "I know. And I'm not asking you to. I don't expect forgiveness, not right away. I know I've hurt you. I know I've destroyed something that meant so much to both of us." Her voice cracked as she spoke, and I saw the rawness in her eyes, the vulnerability that had been hiding beneath the surface. "I just need to know if we can try," she whispered. "If we can figure out a way to rebuild this, even if it's one piece at a time." I felt my heart twist at her words. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to reach across the table and tell her that we could make it work, that we could heal together, but I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. I wasn't sure I could trust her the way I had before. And that hurt more than anything else. "I don't know," I answered, my voice breaking slightly. "I don't know if we can. But I want to try. I don't know if that's enough, but it's all I can offer right now." Her eyes softened at my words, and she nodded slowly. "That's all I can ask for." We sat there for a long time in silence, the weight of everything hanging between us. It wasn't a perfect moment. It wasn't the resolution either of us had hoped for. But it was real. It was raw. And in that moment, it was enough. "I'm sorry," she said again, her voice steady now, but her gaze unwavering. "I've hurt you in ways I can't take back. But I want to work for this. I want to prove to you that I'm worth fighting for." "I don't know what that looks like," I admitted, my heart heavy. "I don't know if we can fix this. But I'm willing to try." She reached out across the table, her hand hovering above mine for a moment before I took it. It was tentative, fragile, but it was a start. Maybe that's all we could do now, start. Start from the broken pieces, start from the wreckage of what we once had, and try to build something new. Something stronger. Something real. We didn't know if it would work. We didn't know what the future held. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like there was a glimmer of hope, a sliver of possibility. And that was enough to make me believe that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild. But it was going to take time. And a lot of effort. And a lot of forgiveness, not just from her, but from me, too. But as we sat there, hands connected across the table, I realized that we weren't alone in this anymore. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to carry us through the long road ahead.